Hello, and welcome back to Thriving, a place and space where we amplify voices of those who choose to thrive because of or in spite of the circumstances they find themselves in. Ke nna Lerato Mahlasela, mosetsane wa lerapo la phala, e reng e tlola tsela, go sale le go lefela. Tla mpona ke ile. Today in studio with me is Tebogo Moalusi, a distinguished business professional, creative entrepreneur, and social activist, and a proud alumnus of GIBS. He has an impressive track record working in sectors such as banking, management, consulting, private equity, ICT, as well as insurance, in the areas of business development, in marketing, and in sales. Tebogo set up and founded the Young Professionals Association and the Bokamoso Cross Mentorship Program, which he led over 12 years. These were initiatives that played a pivotal role in empowering youth and nurturing them for the future. Tebogo has established several businesses and excels in environments that require visioning, strategy, and collaborative partnerships. He's also a co-founder of the Rise Mzansi civic movement committed to social justice, citizenship empowerment, and transformative change in South Africa. I'm excited to have a conversation and hear from him what his thriving story is. Tebogo, welcome.
Thank you.
To Thriving.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Good, good. What's your definition? Let's start there. If I say to you, are you thriving, Tebogo? What do you mean?
Sure. Am I thriving? So I think it would be against the definition of resistance, because I think you thrive against something. And so thriving would be, how are you performing against that resistance? Whether it is mental resistance, physical resistance, spiritual resistance, financial resistance, relational. And so, yeah, that's how I would define thriving, is how are you doing and how are you performing against those resistance? Yeah.
In the many facets of life,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
What is your thriving story then, if we were to say, take us back over the last, the next few minutes?
Yeah.
And that which makes you you.
It's my story of today. I think to be here, to be me, is the thriving story. You introed around choice. And I think thriving is a daily choice. A friend of mine, Mushambi, who's an author, talks about this concept of miles after contact. And it's a reference to American football, which is after you've been hit by something massive, magnificent, and significant, how do you respond? You can imagine in the world of sport, you get, this moment of impact that even the crowd is like,
the worries actually in that moment.
They anticipate that something is broken.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you start to make strides and inches after that moment. And so my thriving story is about those moments of impact and how I move after them. And I've had many of them. I think, the most recent one for me was in 2024, after, a grueling electoral campaign coming to an end, and realizing that I've got no more income. And during that campaign, I was operating in my ikigai, right? There was this convergence of purpose. We felt like the world needed us to exist. I was really good at the work we were doing and we were getting paid. And all of a sudden, one of the elements, which is your ability to earn income and look after your family, all of a sudden gets removed. And, the challenges of navigating life as a Black man, as a professional, as a father, as a husband, when you don't have income, have been incredibly difficult, And over and above that, it's the life after that where you're defined as a politician, but that carries a stigma with it, Despite the fact that we came to institutions like GIBS, people don't judge you because of your capability and contribution. They judge you on their perception of the words, right, and the identity. And that then pockets you in a certain space of society, which is not necessarily positive in this country. So it's been a story of thriving against financial challenges, a story of thriving against what's the impact that has on your ecosystem, on your romantic relationship with my wife, and how that has an impact on one's levels of motivation. And then I think one of the others is this confusion of, do I pursue and continue down the path of business, or do I go back into the world of work to look for that stability and that consistency of income? and knocking on doors. And despite this shiny, beautiful certificate that we have from this world-class institution,
Say that again.
people still saying,
We're not
perhaps not. And that level of rejection and how that fuels a sense of, lack of confidence in self, despite the CV that you've read. And so when I go back to the beginning, the daily story, the daily challenge, the daily choice of showing up, of choosing to be me and following my path and igniting my internal power is my thriving story. Yeah.
But what lessons are you learning? If you're saying actually the story of thriving is unraveling now in your life, what lessons are you learning around how to practically navigate those, especially when the outcome is not here yet, right? You're still trying to problem solve. What are those lessons that can be shared?
Sure. So I think the first one is that it's okay to not be okay. I think we have built this facade that we must be high-performing professionals who are always on point, and I had to take a moment to reflect and just re-energize and reconnect to my sense of self. So I think that's important, a moment to pause and reflect. The second is how crucial community is. For me, the most fundamental institution in your world experiences is your family. We work for big banks, for conglomerates and state-owned enterprises. But when you come back to it, the essence and core of the institution that sustains life is the family. It's the first place where where you're taught values, where you're taught your own value as a human being. Libito la Hao is the first thing you're given as a gift. And mine is Tebogo, which is gratitude. And so it is sitting in that identity of self, which is I'm gratitude, and also connecting with this institution called family and building it. I think the other kind of lesson that has been for me is, despite the challenges I've faced, I have truly come face to face with my true power.
Okay.
I now know exactly who I am, because everything that I now have is almost a reflection of my contribution. Yes, we are, as a consequence of the prayers of our mothers and ancestors, we don't take that out there.
We stand, on the shoulders of
Absolutely.
giants. Yeah.
But through the process and journey of the last year, I've had to shed a lot of things that I've come to realize that I didn't need. It was a perceived idea that I must have them. And because of my circumstance, I had to literally be very thorough about making sure I keep only which I need. So that was the one thing. But the other thing that happened around accessing my own power was coming into full view of how my contribution has direct impact with returned value. What I mean by that is sometimes we work in big business and institutions, and what you earn, you can't really quantify it based on your level of effort. It's as a function of the brand of the company you work with or the quality of the team that you're in. Sometimes you can coast and not even show up at work and still get a paycheck.
Don't even tell me about those ones.
Right? But now I can truly say that the things that I'm doing and the income, the value that I'm receiving is almost as a direct reflection of my daily effort,
yes,
which is then direct reflection of my power.
Yeah.
And that's why I said that. And that is something that has been magnificent to experience.
To watch, I imagine.
And I've fallen in love with myself again. And not with the version that I think the world needs to validate, but with the version of myself that I think the world gets to engage with on a daily basis.
And the version of yourself that gives you peace and fulfillment is what I'm hearing as well.
Right. That's right.
Such gems, right? The pausing and reflecting and accepting that sometimes not being okay is okay. And that's hard in our society actually to sometimes accept, right? That vulnerability to say at this moment. And you mentioned doing that as a man also. It's a big challenge because there's big expectations, right? A man must. That's the notion out there. But also, as you mentioned, being rooted in something that is strong, like your family, that we are a product of at the end of the day. And it's something that can remind you to thrive because you remember where you come from, as you said, your values, your name, but it also gives you a reason because you've got a family that you need to take care of.
Absolutely.
So that keeps you going as well.
Yeah.
I like the superpower idea.
Yeah.
And the fact that sometimes to get to the superpower idea, there's a shedding
Yes.
that needs to happen.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's a shedding of a view of myself I used to have that I believed I would only be accepted if I had.
Mm-hmm.
Or a view of, or maybe certain dreams and aspirations, and realizing that those ones are not as valid for me going forward. How do I shed those, but how do I make room for the next? And it sounds like the past year has given you that gift.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. I said to you earlier before we started the episode that we're interested in hearing individual story of thriving, but we're also interested in systems that thrive and how we can create those, right? And I found an article that you penned for Mail and Guardian at the beginning of the year, and you were talking to people that had just matriculated.
Yeah.
And there's a concept there that I quite was intrigued with. You talked about Ubuntu Economy.
Yes.
Right? And you say that it's rooted in creativity, in care, and in climate resilience, that it prioritizes community well-being over individual gain, which is a forgotten superpower. Here's that word again.
Yes.
Which is a forgotten superpower. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Wow. When you read it, I'm like, was that me? That sounds nice, man. Clever guy. So when the context of writing that piece was against the dream that we have given our kind of children, that you come out of university and you're going to be absorbed into the world of work. And again, these shiny certificates that we think are going to unlock all of possibility and wonder. And how the statistics obviously tell us otherwise. Right.
True.
And so the Ubuntu economy was a response to that challenge that realizes that we've got a massive youth unemployment challenge, which is a crisis in itself. And that in the creative, the care, and the climate economies, we have an opportunity to actually deal with those. So the superpower thing, I say creativity is our superpower, because if you just think about our exports, the things that we've been able to put into the world, from Amapiano to DJ Black Coffee to Trevor Noah, we've got so much to be proud of our ability to be innately creative. Sure. You play a piece of music, kokasi, and you see how little kids who can barely talk respond to music, respond to creative stimuli. So creativity is within us as Africans. And I think we're doing it a disservice by not being able to quantify it and commercialize it and platform it like other traditional assets that we have in any other market. And so that's the creative economy. It looks at what is our ability to create, and how could we repackage that for it to be competitive into the world. We already demonstrated that we can do so, but I don't think
do more of that.
How do we do more of it? And to your systems question is, how does the full system integrate to deliver that output from the state to all the other bodies, federations, to financial services? How do
education institutions like ourselves?
Absolutely. Healthcare. How do we integrate creativity as an extension of that which is us as a people, and monetize it so that we can change the substantive conditions of people living in the country? So that's the creative part. The K economy, if you look at myself, for example, and many of my peers, we are as a result of the K economy because our mothers were nurses. Many of our parents were either teachers or doctors, or social workers, right?
Yes,
that was the economy of the township. That was, despite the repression and the oppression we faced, it is those vocations and professions that put us through school. And they were dignified, professions that built homes and took us to holiday once in a while.
Exactly. And took us to varsity, and we get to where we are, because of those.
Absolutely. However, that has no longer become the focus. We don't invest in care work, in the care economy, as it were. And it's an ultra-absorptive economy where you can actually bring in a mass of young people. and teach them how to give care. We've got a drug, alcohol, and gambling abuse pandemic in our townships, right? And actually everywhere. It's not just our townships. Care workers would be the first respondents to some of those challenges. We can't on one side have massive problems with those three, the triple pandemic, and not put in place societal institutions and systems to respond. And so the work that I think we should be doing is getting young people to have access to a lot more of those vocations. And I think we would then give them jobs, the dignity of work, ability to earn incomes, and that would have a knock-on effect. The last one is climate. We were talking about the weather earlier when we were offline, but we know that climate change is no longer a rumor. Yep. It's here, it's happening.
We live it. Yeah.
We live it. But as an extension of that, we've got issues around water, around spatial management, around air quality, around food provision, all of which are economies in themselves. But we don't have a strategy and a systemic and systematic response to them. The last thing I will say about the Ubuntu economy, and I call it that because it is the economy that would reflect the aspirations of a people and look after its people. If we focused on the Ubuntu economy, my belief is that we would make quite a massive impact on some of the social and economic challenges that we have. And I would posit that we should probably look at that in parallel with mining, construction, and all the others. We should invest a lot more in these alternative streams of economics in order to make sure that young people have got a pathway into the future, failing which we have a disaster waiting to happen.
And we don't have a thriving society at the end of that day.
Absolutely.
For me, what's coming out is this idea of not framing it as challenges, but so not a climate challenge, not an employment challenge, but as you're saying, climate economy, you're saying care economy, but that reframing of actually, do you see this as an opportunity?
Yes.
That you can actually create a sustainable economy around care, around the creative space, as well as in the climate sector. And I don't think we've had enough dialogue to help with that reframing. So I hope we continue to have conversations that help with that, but also take us beyond the conversation to, so what are those small steps and actions that can be taken around enabling the system accordingly?
Absolutely.
Any last thoughts? So I normally say, put on your dad hat, put on your entrepreneur business hat, put on your South African citizen hat. If you were to speak to someone now who may be feeling that they are experiencing less thriving experiences than more, what can you share with them?
I would say, firstly, you're valid, you're enough, you're important, and you're loved. And you need to find spaces where that is validated. That's the first thing. You can't create and move and generate energy from a space of nothingness. You have to build something, and then you will get an outcome. The second is friction is a part of success. From the very moment of birth, we know that friction is involved, right? I always say that pain is a function of life because it's one of the very first things that introduces you into the world as a being, right? And so once you have a healthy relationship with the framing of pain, it actually can be fuel for success and thriving. The third thing I would say is that don't be uncomfortable with not knowing, because many of us don't know what we're doing. Even the most cleverest of people,
with all the certificates,
we are figuring it out together. And we are living in such an ever-changing environment and world that it's hard to always know everything every day. And so I think that inquisitive mind and that adventure of thought and of experiences should be what helps you get into spaces where you can thrive and find newness and find new frictions so that you don't get stuck. The last thing I would say is we are going to make it because we are here today. Though that point of contact, when you go back to when was the point of contact and you recount the days of how many times you've made it, today is a celebration of how many times you've won, right? And so when you're watching this, if you're thinking about whether or not you're thriving, you are, because you are here. And there've been many things that we have survived. We forget that some of us who are now 40 have survived 2 recessions, a pandemic, a possible third world war. So there's a hell of a lot that's happening, but we are here today. And sometimes be kind to yourself, give yourself grace, and look at the yards you've made since the last point of contact.
Living up to his name and actually ending on a note of being grateful, because at the end of the day, you are here today, and that's a celebration of how far you've come. Remember, you are valuable, that your dreams are valid, and that you can go and should actually explore spaces that actually celebrate that value and stay inquisitive. To more thriving, we look forward to hearing from you, thriving at gibbs.co.za, and we look forward to seeing you at the next episode.